What happens when Hollywood's most enigmatic star discovers a painting that seems to defy reality itself? Johnny Depp was strolling through Montmartre's cobblestone streets until a mysterious canvas in a weathered gallery window stopped him, cold. While paparazzi hunted for his next scandal, Depp found himself drawn into an art world mystery that spanned centuries. The signature read L.M. Durand, 1889, yet the painting seemed to breathe with impossible life, changing its scene when no one was watching. The truth behind this haunting masterpiece would shake Paris's art establishment to its core. But the real shock came when Depp traced its origins to a homeless artist who claimed he wasn't the painter at all, just its guardian across time. In the end, what Depp discovered in that small gallery would force him to question everything he thought. He knew about art reality and the thin line between them. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. In the heart of Montmartre, where cobblestone streets whisper tales of artistic legends and hidden treasures, an unexpected discovery awaits those who dare to look beyond the obvious. What secrets lie within the strokes of a forgotten masterpiece, and how can a single painting alter the course of one's destiny? This peculiar tale begins on a crisp autumn morning in 2023, when Johnny Depp, seeking solitude among the winding streets of Paris's most bohemian quarter, stumbles upon an antiquated gallery that would forever change his perspective on art and reality. The gallery, nestled between a patisserie and a vintage bookshop on Rue d'Abbesse, catches Depp's attention with its weathered burgundy facade and gold-leafed window frames. Inside, amid the dust-laden air and flickering vintage sconces, a particular painting commands his attention. The canvas, approximately 4 feet by 3, depicts a solitary figure observing a crowd from a balcony. But it's the observer's reflection in a mirror within the painting that reveals an entirely empty balcony, a visual paradox that defies logical explanation. The signature in the bottom right corner reads L.M. Durand, 1889, yet no historical record of this artist exists in any major art catalog or museum archive. The gallery owner, Madame Rousseau, a woman whose knowledge of art history spans decades, admits she acquired the painting through unusual circumstances at an estate sale in the 16th arrondissement. The previous owner, she explains, insisted on selling it immediately, claiming the painting had begun to change when no one was watching. Depp's initial skepticism gives way to intrigue as he notices subtle details that seem to shift under his sustained gaze. The observer's clothing appears to alternate between period-appropriate attire and modern dress, while the crowd below transforms from 19th-century Parisians to contemporary tourists, depending on the angle of observation. These changes occur so subtly that they might be dismissed as tricks of light or imagination, yet their persistence demands attention. The painting's technical execution reveals masterful brushwork characteristic of the French Impressionist movement, but with an unsettling precision in certain areas that suggests modern techniques. Art experts called to examine the piece find themselves unable to definitively date the materials used, as analysis shows conflicting results. Some pigments appear to be consistent with those available in the 1880s, while others contain synthetic components developed only in the last decade. Local historians begin piecing together fragments of information about L.M. Durand, discovering scattered references in private letters and diary entries from the late 19th century. These documents describe a reclusive artist who claimed to have discovered a method of capturing time itself within paint, though such assertions were dismissed as the ravings of an eccentric mind. Yet how does one explain the painting's apparent ability to bridge different eras within a single frame? The mystery deepens when Depp notices a small detail previously overlooked. A newspaper visible in the painted crowd displays headlines that change to reflect current events. This discovery attracts the attention of art historians and paranormal researchers alike, each offering their own theories about the painting's nature. Some suggest advanced holographic technology hidden within the canvas, while others propose more supernatural explanations involving temporal anomalies and captured moments of time. As word spreads about the peculiar artwork, the small gallery becomes an unlikely focal point for discussions about the nature of reality and perception. Photographers attempting to document the painting's changes find their images consistently blurred or distorted, adding another layer to the growing mystery. Security cameras installed to monitor the painting experience unexplained malfunctions during periods when witnesses report the most dramatic transformations. The painting's influence extends beyond mere curiosity, affecting those who spend time in its presence. Gallery visitors report experiencing vivid dreams of 19th-century Paris, while others claim to recognize themselves among the painted figures, despite the chronological impossibility. These accounts, while impossible to verify, contribute to the growing legend surrounding the artwork and its enigmatic creator. Depp's initial chance encounter with the painting evolves into a dedicated investigation as he works with art experts and historians to unravel its mysteries. Each new discovery raises more questions than answers, challenging conventional understanding of art, time, and perception. What began as a simple morning walk through Montmartre has opened a door to an investigation that blurs the lines between past and present, observation and participation, reality and illusion. The discovery of the enigmatic painting in Montmartre led Johnny Depp down a rabbit hole of artistic history, revealing layers of intrigue surrounding its creator. Initial research through the Parisian art archives unveiled a name that had once commanded respect in the highest echelons of the European art world: Marcel Laurent. Laurent's early career blazed through the Parisian art scene of the 1980s, marking him as one of the most promising painters of his generation. His distinctive style, which merged classical techniques with contemporary subjects, earned him recognition at the prestigious École des Beaux-Arts. What set Laurent apart was his uncanny ability to capture the essence of his subjects, particularly in portraits that seemed to hold more than mere physical representations. The artist's meteoric rise included exhibitions at the Louvre, where his work, Les âmes silencieuses, the silent souls, became the youngest piece ever to be permanently displayed in the modern wing. Critics praised Laurent's masterful use of light and shadow, drawing parallels to Rembrandt while acknowledging his uniquely modern perspective. But what drove this artistic genius to create such haunting works? Records from the Musée d'Orsay archives revealed Laurent's obsession with the concept of human consciousness captured on canvas. He developed a technique he called l'âme visible, the visible soul, which involved lengthy sessions with his subjects, sometimes spanning months. During these sessions, Laurent claimed to capture not just their physical appearance but the very essence of their being. The painter's success peaked in 1992 with a series of portraits commissioned by European nobility. These works, now scattered across private collections, commanded prices that rivaled those of established masters. However, the pressure of these high-profile commissions began to take its toll. Laurent's correspondence from this period, preserved in the National Library of France, showed increasing signs of psychological strain. What triggered Laurent's dramatic fall from grace? The answer lay in a controversial portrait he completed in 1994. The subject, a prominent French industrialist, reportedly became obsessed with his own image after the painting was completed. He claimed the portrait had captured something dark within him, something he couldn't bear to face. The industrialist's subsequent suicide created a scandal that reverberated through the art world. The incident marked the beginning of Laurent's descent. Galleries began canceling exhibitions, and former patrons distanced themselves. Rumors circulated about the cursed nature of his portraits, with some subjects reporting inexplicable changes in their personalities after being painted. These claims, while never substantiated, created an aura of supernatural dread around Laurent's work. By 1996, Laurent had withdrawn from public life entirely. His last known residence was a small studio in Montmartre, where neighbors reported strange noises and odd lights at all hours. The final documented work from this period was a series of self-portraits, each progressively more distorted and disturbing than the last. What drove him to create these increasingly haunting images? The artist's financial records obtained through the French Banking Association showed a rapid depletion of his once considerable fortune. Investments in obscure occult books and rare pigments suggested an obsession with unlocking some hidden, artistic truth. Laurent's final bank transaction occurred in 1998, after which he seemingly vanished from all official records. The painting Depp discovered appeared to date from this final period, though its exact provenance remained unclear. Art experts consulted about the piece noted its unusual properties: pigments that seemed to shift under different lighting conditions and brushstrokes that defied conventional analysis. Could this work hold clues to Laurent's disappearance? Investigation into Laurent's past revealed a pattern of brilliant artists who had influenced his work, many of whom had also experienced tragic ends. This lineage of troubled genius raised questions about the nature of artistic brilliance and its potential costs. What price had Laurent paid for his extraordinary ability to capture the human soul? As Depp delved deeper into Laurent's history, connections began emerging between the painter's theories about consciousness and ancient esoteric practices. References in Laurent's journals pointed to medieval alchemists who believed in capturing spiritual essence through art. Had Laurent discovered something in these ancient texts that led to his eventual downfall? The mystery of Marcel Laurent's fate remained unsolved, but his legacy lived on in the haunting works he left behind. Each painting seemed to pose a question: what happens when an artist's pursuit of truth leads them beyond the boundaries of conventional reality? The painting in Montmartre stood as both evidence and enigma, a portal into the mind of a genius who may have ventured too far in his quest to capture the human soul. The search for Etienne Dupont led Johnny through the winding streets of Montreal's artistic quarter, where every gallery window seemed to mock his efforts with reflections of what the renowned painter's work used to be. Armed with the knowledge of Dupont's illustrious past and subsequent disappearance, Johnny found himself questioning whether finding the artist would provide the answers he sought, or merely confirm the tragic narrative he'd uncovered. The breakthrough came through an unexpected connection at Le Chat Noir, a dimly lit café frequented by local artists. Vincent Beaumont, a silver-haired art dealer who had represented Dupont during his prime, recognized Johnny's earnest inquiries about the painter. Unlike others who had dismissed such questions, Vincent's eyes held a mixture of resignation and protective concern when Dupont's name was mentioned. Etienne still paints, Vincent revealed, stirring his espresso with methodical precision. But he's not the man you've read about in the archives. The art dealer's words carried the weight of 2 decades of friendship, colored by the painful transformation he'd witnessed. Vincent explained how Dupont had gradually withdrawn from the art world, refusing commissions and declining exhibitions, until his retreat became complete. The revelation of Dupont's current circumstances challenged everything Johnny had anticipated. The artist now resided in a modest apartment above a hardware store in Saint-Henri, far removed from the prestigious galleries that once showcased his work. Vincent described how Dupont spent his days creating paintings he refused to sell, covering his walls with canvases that would never see the light of public display. What drove a celebrated artist to such deliberate obscurity? Vincent's account painted a complex portrait of artistic integrity colliding with commercial success. Dupont's rejection of the art market wasn't born from bitterness or defeat, but from a profound shift in his relationship with creativity itself. The artist had concluded that the machinery of commerce had corrupted his authentic expression, leading him to sever all ties with the industry that had made him famous. The conversation revealed how Dupont's transformation had polarized the art community. Some viewed his withdrawal as a courageous stand against commercialization, while others dismissed it as the ultimate act of creative cowardice. Vincent, however, spoke of it as something else entirely, a necessary evolution in Dupont's artistic journey. The dealer had maintained sporadic contact with Dupont, becoming one of the few bridges between the artist's past and present lives. Johnny learned that Dupont's daily routine remained structured around his art, though the purpose had shifted dramatically. The painter rose before dawn, worked through the morning hours, and spent afternoons studying the changing light across Montreal's urban landscape. His new works, according to Vincent, possessed an intensity that surpassed his celebrated pieces, yet they remained hidden from the world. The question of whether Dupont would agree to meet with Johnny hung heavily in the air. Vincent's protective instincts surfaced as he debated whether to facilitate an introduction. The art dealer had witnessed countless attempts by journalists, collectors, and critics to draw Dupont back into the public eye, each ending in polite but firm rejection. What made Johnny's quest different? The turning point came when Johnny shared his true motivation, not to expose or exploit, but to understand the evolution of an artist who chose integrity over acclaim. Vincent recognized a genuine desire to explore the human story behind the headlines, the reality beneath the myth that the art world had constructed. With careful consideration, Vincent agreed to arrange a meeting, but with clear conditions. There would be no recordings, no photographs, and no guarantees that DuPont would engage in any meaningful dialogue. The artist's trust had to be earned, not assumed, and his privacy respected above all else. Could Johnny accept these terms, knowing they might lead to a dead end? The arrangement was set for the following morning. Vincent would make the introduction, but the responsibility for building any connection with DuPont would rest entirely with Johnny. As they parted ways, Vincent offered one final insight that would prove crucial. Don't ask him about the past. If you want to understand Etienne, look at what he's creating now. The present is where his truth lives. The prospect of meeting DuPont carried both promise and peril. Would the reclusive artist offer insights into his dramatic transformation, or would he remain as enigmatic in person as he had become in his absence from public life? The answers lay waiting in a modest apartment above a hardware store, where one of Montreal's most brilliant artistic minds had chosen to redefine his relationship with creativity, far from the watching eyes of the world. The weight of unspoken words hung heavily in the dimly lit apartment, where Etienne had sequestered himself for the past decade. The arrival of Johnny and Vincent disrupted the carefully constructed isolation that had become both his refuge and his prison. How long could an artist deny their true nature before it consumed them entirely? Vincent's familiar presence provided a bridge between Etienne's past and present, while Johnny represented an unexpected catalyst for change. The young gallery owner's determination to understand the artist who had vanished at the height of his success created an unavoidable confrontation with truths Etienne had buried beneath years of self-imposed exile. The conversation began cautiously, with Vincent mediating between Johnny's eager questions and Etienne's reluctant responses. The artist's hands, which had once created works that moved millions, remained stubbornly still as he listened to Johnny's passionate arguments about the impact his art continued to have on people worldwide. What right did he have to deny the world his gift, Johnny challenged, when his work had touched so many lives? Etienne's resistance began to crack as Johnny shared stories of individuals who had found hope and inspiration in his paintings. Young woman who had overcome depression after connecting with the raw emotion in his piece, Solitude in Blue. A veteran who found healing through the peaceful landscapes of his later works. These accounts struck at the core of why Etienne had begun creating art in the first place, to forge connections through shared human experience. The discussion shifted to the night of the gallery fire, a topic Etienne had refused to address for years. Vincent, who had witnessed the aftermath, provided context that Johnny had never known. The fire had destroyed more than just artwork. It had consumed Etienne's faith in his ability to communicate through his art. The critical acclaim and commercial success had paradoxically left him feeling more isolated, as though his work had become disconnected from its original purpose. Johnny's perspective challenged this notion. He argued that the very fact that Etienne's art continued to resonate with people proved its authenticity. The market value and critical analysis were secondary to the fundamental connection between artist and viewer. Could Etienne continue to deny this connection when evidence of its impact was so clearly presented? The conversation delved deeper into the nature of artistic responsibility. Vincent, who had watched his friend retreat from the world, posed difficult questions about the obligation artists have to their gift. Was it selfish to withhold one's talent, or was it more authentic to remain silent when one felt empty of meaningful expression? These questions stirred something in Etienne that had long lain dormant. As the hours passed, the apartment's atmosphere shifted from tense confrontation to thoughtful reflection. Johnny shared his vision for a small, intimate showing of Etienne's work, not a grand comeback, but a modest return to the dialogue between artist and audience. The proposal sparked both fear and a flicker of possibility in Etienne's eyes. Vincent observed the subtle changes in his friend's demeanor as the conversation progressed. The rigid posture began to soften. The defensive responses became more contemplative. Could this unexpected intervention break through the walls Etienne had built around himself? The discussion turned to the practical aspects of creating again. Etienne admitted that he had not completely abandoned his art. Sketches and half-finished works lay hidden in corners of his apartment. These secret expressions revealed that the artist within had never truly disappeared, but had simply gone into hibernation, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Johnny's genuine appreciation for Etienne's artistic journey, unmarred by commercial considerations, began to resonate with the artist's original motivations for creating. The young gallery owner's understanding of art as a means of human connection rather than a commodity aligned with Etienne's own forgotten ideals. The confrontation evolved into a collaborative exploration of possibilities. What would it mean to create art on his own terms, free from the expectations that had once overwhelmed him? How could he reconcile his need for authentic expression with the inevitable public interest his return would generate? As daylight began to fade, the conversation reached a crucial juncture. Etienne stood before an empty canvas that Vincent had brought, his hand hovering near a brush for the first time in years. Would this moment mark the beginning of his return to the art world, or would the weight of the past prove too heavy to overcome? The answer lay not in words but in the subtle shift of Etienne's perspective. The question was no longer whether he should create again, but how he could create with renewed purpose while maintaining the integrity of his artistic vision. What discoveries awaited in this potential new chapter of his artistic journey? The familiar scent of coffee and fresh pastries wafted through Le Petit Coin, a modest café tucked away in Paris's 11th arrondissement. In the back room, where afternoon light filtered through dusty windows, Etienne Dubois sat before a blank canvas for the first time in 5 years. His weathered hands trembled slightly as they hovered over the surface, holding a brush that felt simultaneously foreign and intimately familiar. What makes an artist return to their craft after years of self-imposed exile? For Etienne, the answer lay in the culmination of recent events that had forced him to confront the very demons he'd been avoiding. The canvas before him represented more than just a potential painting. It embodied the possibility of redemption, of reconnecting with a part of himself he'd deliberately buried. The café's owner, Madame Laurent, had offered him this space without hesitation when he'd quietly inquired about a place to work. She remembered him from his earlier days when his paintings had begun attracting attention in galleries across Paris. Now, in this humble back room that smelled of coffee grounds and aged wood, Etienne found himself facing not just a blank canvas, but the accumulated weight of his abandoned aspirations. His first brushstroke was tentative, almost apologetic. The paint, a deep cerulean blue, created a thin line that seemed to pulse with possibility. How strange it felt to watch color bloom across the white expanse after so many years of denying himself this simple pleasure. Each subsequent stroke grew more confident, as muscle memory began to override the hesitation that had paralyzed him for so long. The subject emerging on his canvas wasn't the grandiose imagery of his previous works, the ones that had earned him recognition and later contributed to his downfall. Instead, he found himself painting the simple view from his apartment window, the weathered zinc rooftops, the chimney pots standing like sentinels against the sky, the play of light across centuries-old stone. Why had he never noticed the profound beauty in these everyday scenes before? As the afternoon progressed, the steady rhythm of his brushwork became punctuated by the muffled sounds of café life beyond the door. The clinking of cups, fragments of conversation, and the periodic hiss of the espresso machine created an unexpected symphony that seemed to complement his work. These sounds, rather than disturbing his concentration, anchored him to the present moment, preventing his mind from wandering too deeply into the past. The painting took shape gradually, building layer upon layer. Etienne discovered that his technique had changed. Whether through the passage of time or his altered perspective, he couldn't be sure. His strokes were looser now, less concerned with perfect representation and more focused on capturing the essence of what he saw. When had this transformation occurred? Had it been developing during all those years he'd refused to pick up a brush? Madame Laurent occasionally brought him coffee, setting it quietly beside him without interrupting his flow. Her presence carried no expectations, no pressure to produce something magnificent. Perhaps this was what he had needed all along, the freedom to create without the burden of others' expectations, without the crushing weight of his own previous success. As the light began to fade and his first painting in 5 years neared completion, Etienne realized something fundamental had shifted within him. The act of painting no longer felt like a battle against his past or a desperate attempt to recapture former glory. Instead, it had become something simpler and more profound, a conversation between himself and the world around him, translated through color and form. The finished piece bore little resemblance to his earlier work, yet it carried an authenticity that his previous paintings, for all their technical brilliance, had sometimes lacked. What would his critics say about this new direction? More importantly, did their opinions matter as much as they once had? The question lingered as he cleaned his brushes and packed away his supplies, but it no longer carried the weight of anxiety it once would have. Tomorrow he would return to this quiet back room, face another blank canvas, and continue this rediscovered dialogue with his art. For now, that was enough. What significance did this modest cafe backroom hold in the greater trajectory of his artistic journey? Could this simple space, free from the pressures of galleries and critics, become the birthplace of something entirely new? As Etienne carefully wrapped his first completed canvas in brown paper, these questions echoed in his mind, not as sources of anxiety, but as intriguing possibilities waiting to be explored. The quiet backroom of Café Lumière had become Etienne's sanctuary over the past few weeks, his newfound artistic momentum building with each stroke of the brush. What had begun as tentative sketches evolved into a collection of paintings that captured the essence of his renewed spirit. The works, though different from his earlier style, carried a depth that spoke of both loss and resurrection. One morning, as Etienne worked on his latest piece, Madame Laurent entered with an unexpected proposition. The cafe's main wall, she explained, had always been reserved for local artists, and it had remained conspicuously empty for the past month. Would Etienne consider displaying his new works? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. The prospect of public exposure stirred conflicting emotions within Etienne. His last exhibition, held 5 years ago at the prestigious Galerie Moderne, had ended in critical disaster. The reviews had been merciless, questioning not just his artistic evolution, but his very legitimacy as an artist. Those words, sharp as knives, had driven him into self-imposed exile from the art world. Madame Laurent's offer represented more than just wall space in a modest cafe. It posed a fundamental question. Could an artist truly create without sharing their work with the world? The paintings accumulating in the backroom testified to Etienne's rekindled passion, but they also demanded a decision about their ultimate purpose. The following days found Etienne grappling with this choice. His new works differed markedly from the calculated, conceptual pieces that had earned him both fame and eventual criticism. These paintings emerged from a place of authenticity, each canvas bearing witness to his journey through darkness and toward redemption. Yet the thought of subjecting them to public scrutiny awakened old fears. Word of the potential exhibition spread through the cafe's regular patrons. Marcel, the elderly chess player who had witnessed Etienne's daily artistic ritual, spoke of anticipation among the neighborhood's residents. The local art community, too, began to stir with rumors of the reclusive painter's return. The pressure mounted as Madame Laurent gently pressed for an answer. She spoke of the cafe's history as a nurturing ground for artists, reminding Etienne of countless creators who had found their voice within these walls. Would he join their ranks, or would his works remain hidden, seen only by the dust motes dancing in the backroom's light? Etienne's decision crystallized during a conversation with Claire, a young art student who frequented the cafe. She had noticed him carrying canvases to and from the backroom and one day asked about his work. Her genuine curiosity, untainted by knowledge of his past reputation, sparked a realization. Art, in its purest form, existed as a bridge between souls. By keeping his paintings hidden, was he not denying their very purpose? The exhibition preparation began quietly. Etienne selected 7 paintings, each representing a different aspect of his artistic resurrection. The process of choosing which works to display forced him to confront his own evolution. These pieces told the story of a painter who had lost his way and found it again in the most unexpected place. As the installation date approached, news of the exhibition spread beyond the cafe's usual circles. Several art critics expressed interest in attending the opening, including some who had penned the devastating reviews of his last show. Their potential presence added another layer of complexity to Etienne's decision. The morning of the installation brought unexpected clarity. As Etienne carefully arranged his paintings on the cafe's wall, he realized that their placement marked not just a physical exhibition, but a philosophical stance. These works represented a declaration of artistic independence, a statement that true creativity flows from authenticity rather than market expectations. The question remained, would this small cafe exhibition mark the beginning of Etienne's redemption in the art world, or would it confirm his decision to create solely for the joy of creation? The answer lay not in critical responses or public opinion, but in the quiet satisfaction of sharing something genuine with the world. What happens when an artist chooses vulnerability over safety? Can redemption be found in the simple act of sharing one's truth? As Etienne stepped back to view his completed installation, these questions echoed through the cafe, mingling with the aroma of coffee and the murmur of conversation. The light, streaming through the cafe's windows, caught the painting's surfaces, bringing them to life in ways that the backroom's seclusion never could. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. News travels swiftly through the cobblestone arteries of Montmartre, carried on whispers, between cafe tables and echoing through the narrow passages where artists once gathered. The unexpected return of Etienne Dupont to the Parisian art scene creates ripples that spread from the heart of the 18th arrondissement to the furthest reaches of the city's artistic community. Who could have predicted that after 15 years of self-imposed exile, the notorious painter would emerge from the shadows? The story of his surprise exhibition becomes a catalyst for renewed interest in his work, with art critics and collectors frantically researching his past pieces. Long-forgotten articles are dusted off from archives, and galleries that once displayed his paintings field countless inquiries about any remaining works in their possession. The few collectors who held on to their Dupont originals through the years of his absence suddenly find themselves at the center of attention, their foresight vindicated by this unexpected turn of events. In the cafes and bistros of Montmartre, where artistic reputations are made and broken over cups of coffee and glasses of wine, conversations inevitably turn to Dupont. Veterans of the neighborhood's golden age share tales of the young artist who once walked these streets, their stories growing more elaborate with each retelling. Some claim to have witnessed his early struggles, while others boast of recognizing his genius before the rest of the world caught on. But how many of these stories hold truth? And how many are merely the embellishments of those seeking to attach themselves to his renewed prominence? The impact of his return extends beyond mere gossip. Art students from the local academies begin appearing in greater numbers around his old haunts, sketchbooks in hand, hoping to capture something of the atmosphere that shaped his work. Gallery owners who once dismissed his style as passé now scrambled to secure pieces for upcoming exhibitions. The irony of this sudden enthusiasm is not lost on those who remember how quickly the art world had turned its back on him years ago. Local businesses, particularly those that have survived since Dupont's active years, capitalize on their historical connections. The cafe where he supposedly conceived his most famous works now displays a small plaque, while the art supply shop that claims to have provided his materials sees an uptick in visitors. These establishments become unofficial stations on an impromptu pilgrimage route for those seeking to trace the artist's footsteps through the neighborhood. The digital age carries the news far beyond the physical boundaries of Montmartre. Art. Blogs and social media channels buzz with speculation about what this means for the contemporary art scene. Young artists debate whether Dupont's return signals a shift back to more traditional techniques, or if it merely represents a momentary nostalgia for a bygone era. What does it mean for an artist to return from obscurity in an age where visibility is constant and fame often fleeting? Professional critics find themselves reassessing their previous positions on Dupont's work. Those who had dismissed him must now confront their past judgments, while his defenders feel vindicated. The discourse shifts from whether his work holds merit to how it fits into the larger narrative of contemporary art history. Publications that had relegated him to occasional retrospective mentions now scramble to secure interviews and commission in-depth analyses of his oeuvre. The residents of Montmartre, particularly the older generation, maintain a more nuanced perspective on the unfolding events. They remember not just the artist, but the man who walked these streets, who struggled with his demons, who contributed to the neighborhood's creative pulse. For them, Dupont's return represents more than just an artistic comeback. It symbolizes the enduring spirit of Montmartre itself, a reminder that the district's artistic soul remains vital, despite the pressures of modernization and tourism. Yet questions persist beneath the surface of this renewed attention. Will Dupont's work find relevance with a new generation of art enthusiasts? Can the artist himself adapt to the transformed landscape of the contemporary art world? The streets of Montmartre hold their secrets close, having seen countless artists rise and fall, their stories woven into the fabric of the neighborhood's history. What new chapter will be written in these ancient stones as one of their own returns to reclaim his place in the artistic pantheon? As galleries scramble to organize retrospectives and collectors compete for available pieces, the true impact of Dupont's return remains to be seen. The streets of Montmartre continue their vigilant watch, having witnessed countless artistic transformations over the decades. They know better than anyone that in the world of art, today's sensation can become tomorrow's footnote, just as yesterday's outcast might become today's celebrated master. The weight of memory bears down differently, in familiar places, where every corner holds echoes of what once was. As Etienne traverses the streets of Montmartre, the neighborhood that shaped his early artistic journey, each landmark serves as a catalyst for confronting the ghosts he left behind 15 years ago. The artist's studio on Rue Lepic, now occupied by another tenant, still bears the distinctive blue door he painted during his first year in Paris. The site triggers memories of his initial arrival in 1905, when the building housed a vibrant community of struggling artists. Among them was Marcel Dubois, Etienne's first mentor and closest friend, whose tragic fate became inextricably linked with Etienne's departure from the art world. The relationship between Etienne and Marcel had flourished in the competitive Parisian art scene, where both men sought to make their mark through distinctly different approaches. While Etienne pursued the emerging modernist movement, Marcel remained devoted to classical techniques, creating a dynamic tension that enhanced their friendship through passionate debates and mutual respect. Their contrasting styles attracted the attention of prominent gallery owner Georges Durand, who saw potential in their artistic dialogue. What began as a promising partnership dissolved into rivalry when Durand proposed an exclusive exhibition featuring both artists. The pressure to produce masterpieces worthy of such an opportunity strained their friendship, particularly as Marcel struggled with declining health and mounting debts. Etienne's success in securing additional commissions while Marcel's work, when unsold, created an undercurrent of resentment that neither man properly addressed. The breaking point came during the winter of 1908, when Marcel's deteriorating mental state coincided with a series of harsh criticisms from influential art critics. The reviews praised Etienne's innovative approach while dismissing Marcel's work as derivative and outdated. Unable to cope with the professional rejection and personal betrayal he perceived, Marcel took his own life in his studio, leaving behind a letter that blamed Etienne for undermining his career. The scandal that followed Marcel's death divided the artistic community. Though Etienne was cleared of any direct involvement, whispers of his role in Marcel's downfall persisted. The guilt and shame proved overwhelming, leading to his self-imposed exile from the very world he had worked so hard to join. The decision to abandon his art and leave Paris came suddenly, without explanation to his remaining friends or patrons. Now standing before the building where it all unfolded, Etienne must confront the question that has haunted him for 15 years. Could he have prevented Marcel's tragedy by being more attentive to his friend's struggles? The answer remains elusive, but the act of returning forces him to examine the complex interplay between ambition, loyalty, and the cost of artistic pursuit. The evolution of Montmartre since his departure reflects the changes within Etienne himself. New cafes occupy spaces where he and Marcel once shared dreams over cheap wine, while modern galleries showcase artistic movements they could not have imagined. Yet beneath these surface transformations, the essential character of the neighborhood endures, much like the fundamental questions about art and friendship that still resonate within him. The passage of time has altered how others view the events of 1908. Many of the artists and critics who once condemned Etienne have moved on or softened their stance, recognizing the tragedy as a product of the era's intense artistic pressures rather than personal malice. This shift in perspective offers potential for redemption, though Etienne must first reconcile with his own role in the narrative. His return to Montmartre forces a confrontation with not only personal memories, but also the broader implications of artistic responsibility. How does one balance individual creative growth against obligations to fellow artists? What price is too high for artistic recognition? These questions, once theoretical debates between friends, now carry the weight of lived experience and loss. The artistic community's reaction to his reappearance demonstrates how stories evolve in the absence of their principal characters. Some younger artists know him only through the lens of Marcel's tragedy, while others have constructed elaborate theories about his years of silence. These varying narratives complicate his attempt to reclaim his place in the neighborhood's artistic landscape. As Etienne navigates these shadows of the past, he discovers that confronting old wounds may be essential for artistic renewal. The very experiences that drove him into exile might now serve as the foundation for a deeper understanding of art's capacity to both heal and harm. The question remains, can he transform these painful memories into a source of creative inspiration without dishonoring Marcel's memory? The art world of Paris buzzed with anticipation as news spread of Colette Rousseau's bold decision to showcase Etienne Laurent's work after his 15-year absence from the public eye. The announcement sent ripples through the tight-knit community of collectors, critics, and curators who had long speculated about the reclusive artist's fate. What would this resurrection of Laurent's artistic legacy reveal about the man who had vanished at the height of his acclaim? Colette approached the exhibition with methodical precision, carefully selecting pieces that would tell the story of Etienne's evolution as an artist. Her curatorial process involved not only the technical arrangement of artwork, but also the delicate task of reintroducing a controversial figure to a fickle audience. The gallery walls, soon to be adorned with Laurent's distinctive style, stood ready to witness either a triumphant return or a critical rebuke. The preparation phase brought unexpected challenges as Colette navigated the complex web of relationships within the Parisian art scene. Several prominent collectors who had once championed Laurent's work now expressed reservations about associating with his name. Their concerns stemmed not from the quality of his art, but from the mysterious circumstances of his departure and the rumors that had flourished in his absence. How would the art community reconcile their memories of the past with the present reality? As word of the upcoming exhibition spread, journalists began making inquiries about Laurent's current whereabouts and state of mind. Colette maintained a careful balance between protecting Etienne's privacy and generating the necessary publicity for the show. She released selected details about his recent work while deflecting questions about his personal life, understanding that the mystery surrounding the artist could either enhance or overshadow the exhibition itself. The logistics of mounting such a significant show demanded attention to countless details. Insurance valuations needed updating, as Laurent's works had appreciated considerably despite his absence. Transportation arrangements for pieces coming from private collections required delicate negotiations, and security measures had to be enhanced given the high-profile nature of the event. Would the physical reality of the exhibition match the growing expectations? Behind the scenes, Colette worked closely with her staff to create an exhibition catalog that would contextualize Laurent's work for both longtime admirers and newcomers. The publication needed to address the gap in his career without dwelling on the personal circumstances that had prompted his retreat. Art historians and critics contributed essays analyzing his technical innovations and thematic developments, while carefully sidestepping speculation about his lost years. The gallery space itself underwent subtle transformations to accommodate Laurent's distinctive artistic vision. Lighting systems were adjusted to capture the nuanced interplay of light and shadow that characterized his later works. Wall colors were selected to complement rather than compete with his palette, and the flow of the space was choreographed to guide visitors through the chronological development of his artistic journey. As the opening date approached, Colette found herself increasingly focused on the technical aspects of presentation while grappling with deeper questions about art, redemption, and the public's right to know an artist's personal story. The exhibition represented more than a simple display of artwork. It stood as a testament to the enduring power of creativity and the possibility of renewal after profound setback. Interest from international galleries and museums added another layer of complexity to the exhibition planning. Several institutions expressed interest in hosting the show after its Parisian run, raising questions about Laurent's willingness to have his work travel without him. These negotiations required careful consideration of how to maintain the integrity of the exhibition while potentially expanding its reach. The response from the contemporary art community revealed the lasting influence of Laurent's work on younger artists. Many cited him as an inspiration despite his long absence, and several requested to attend the private opening. This unexpected dimension of the exhibition's impact raised questions about the nature of artistic legacy and the relationship between an artist's presence and their work's continuing relevance. As final preparations fell into place, Colette realized that the success of the exhibition would be measured not just in sales or critical reviews, but in its ability to bridge the gap between Laurent's past and present. The gallery walls would soon tell a story of artistic evolution, personal struggle, and potential redemption. But would the audience be ready to receive this narrative with open minds and hearts? The transformation of the gallery space continued, as each artwork found its designated position, creating a dialogue between pieces that spanned decades of Laurent's career. The question lingering in the air was whether this carefully orchestrated presentation would serve as a new beginning, or merely as a posthumous tribute to a career that had once shown such promise. What revelations awaited in the interplay between artist, artwork, and audience? The role of unexpected allies in preserving artistic legacies often emerges from the most unlikely places, as demonstrated by Vincent, the street vendor who had witnessed Etienne's daily routines for over 2 decades. His position at the corner of Rue Saint-Honoré had provided him with a unique perspective on the artist's life, one that extended beyond the formal observations of critics and collectors. Vincent's initial hesitation to share his knowledge about Etienne stemmed from a deep-seated respect for the artist's privacy. Having watched Etienne pass by his stand countless times, sometimes stopping for brief conversations about the weather or current events, Vincent had accumulated a treasure trove of casual observations that painted a more intimate portrait of the artist than any formal biography could capture. What made these seemingly mundane interactions so valuable to Colette's mission? The street vendor's decision to trust Colette with his memories marked a crucial turning point in her quest to revive Etienne's legacy. Vincent revealed how Etienne would often pause at his stand, not just to purchase newspapers, but to sketch quick studies of passing pedestrians on their margins. These improvised drawings, which Vincent had carefully preserved over the years, offered glimpses into Etienne's spontaneous creativity and his ability to capture fleeting moments of urban life. Through Vincent's recollections, a pattern emerged of Etienne's daily rituals and habits that had gone unnoticed by the art world. The artist would arrive at precisely 7:30 each morning, purchasing his daily paper and occasionally sharing insights about his current projects. These morning exchanges, though brief, revealed Etienne's deep connection to the city's rhythm and its inhabitants. Vincent's detailed memory of these interactions provided valuable context for understanding the evolution of Etienne's artistic vision. The street vendor's collection of newspaper sketches and remembered conversations began to fill crucial gaps in the timeline of Etienne's work. Vincent recalled specific dates when the artist's demeanor changed, corresponding with major shifts in his artistic style. These observations helped Colette establish a more accurate chronology of Etienne's artistic development, challenging some previously accepted assumptions about his career trajectory. Vincent's contribution extended beyond mere anecdotes. His stand had served as an unofficial observation post for the neighborhood's changing character over the decades, allowing him to connect Etienne's artistic evolution with the transformation of the surrounding urban landscape. How did these changes influence the artist's perspective and choice of subjects? The relationship between Vincent and Etienne highlighted the artist's connection to Paris's working class, an aspect of his life that had been largely overlooked by critics and historians. Through Vincent's eyes, Etienne emerged not just as a talented artist, but as someone deeply embedded in the fabric of everyday Parisian life. This perspective proved invaluable for Colette's upcoming exhibition, offering a fresh angle on Etienne's work that resonated with contemporary audiences. Vincent's decision to share his collection of newspaper sketches with Colette represented a significant act of trust. These informal works, never intended for public display, revealed Etienne's creative process in its most unguarded moments. The spontaneity and immediacy of these sketches provided insight into how the artist translated his observations into the more formal works that had earned him recognition. The street vendor's testimony also shed light on Etienne's final years, a period about which little was previously known. Vincent's daily interactions with the artist continued until just days before his death, offering precious details about Etienne's state of mind and creative focus during this crucial period. What could these final conversations reveal about the artist's unrealized ambitions? As Colette incorporated Vincent's insights into her exhibition plans, the street vendor's role evolved from that of a casual observer to an essential contributor to art history. His detailed recollections helped construct a more nuanced understanding of Etienne as both artist and individual, challenging the often one-dimensional portraits presented in formal art historical accounts. The collaboration between Colette and Vincent demonstrated how artistic legacies are preserved not just in galleries and museums, but in the memories of those who witnessed the daily lives of creators. Their partnership revealed how the reconstruction of an artist's story requires looking beyond traditional sources to include the perspectives of those who observe their subjects in unguarded moments, away from the spotlight of public attention. Vincent's trust in sharing his memories and preserved sketches with Colette opened new possibilities for understanding Etienne's artistic journey. His contribution underscored the importance of considering multiple viewpoints when reconstructing historical narratives, particularly in the arts where formal documentation often fails to capture the full complexity of creative lives. The transformation of raw emotion into art requires more than mere technical skill or creative vision. It demands courage to confront the depths of one's own experience. For Etienne, who had not touched a brush to canvas in over 20 years, this moment carried the weight of both redemption and terror. How does an artist return to their craft after decades of self-imposed exile? The morning light filtered through the dusty windows of his small apartment as Etienne arranged his newly acquired supplies. Vincent, the street vendor, had provided him with basic materials: student-grade acrylics, several brushes of varying sizes, and 2 modest canvases. The tools were far from the professional-grade materials he once used, but their humble nature seemed fitting for this rebirth. Etienne's hands trembled as he squeezed small amounts of paint onto a chipped ceramic plate that would serve as his palette. The familiar scent of acrylic paint triggered a flood of memories: his first art class, his breakthrough exhibition, the day he walked away from it all. Each color seemed to hold a story. Cadmium yellow spoke of summer afternoons in Provence. Cerulean blue whispered of Mediterranean skies, and crimson red echoed the passion he once poured into every stroke. The blank canvas before him posed questions that had haunted him for decades. What right did he have to create again? Would his technique, dulled by time, betray the visions in his mind? The artistic muscle memory remained dormant, like a language nearly forgotten but still encoded in the depths of consciousness. His first brushstroke was tentative, almost apologetic. The paint left a hesitant mark, neither bold nor confident, yet it represented something profound, the breaking of a self-imposed barrier that had stood for 20 years. With each subsequent stroke, Etienne's movements became more assured, guided by an inner rhythm that had never truly left him. The subject matter emerged organically from his subconscious, the view from his window, but not as it appeared in reality. Instead, the scene transformed through the lens of his accumulated experiences. The familiar streets took on new dimensions, buildings bent and swayed with emotional rather than architectural logic, and the sky reflected not the weather, but the turbulent journey of his soul. Time dissolved as Etienne worked, the hours marked only by the changing quality of light and the gradual evolution of the image before him. He forgot about food, about his aching joints, about the years of regret. The act of painting became a meditation, a conversation between his past and present selves. Technical challenges arose as he worked. His hands, less steady than in his youth, required him to adapt his technique. The student-grade paints behaved differently from the professional materials he once used, requiring more layers to achieve the desired opacity and vibrancy. Yet these limitations forced him to innovate, to find new ways of expressing his vision. The DG painting took shape through layers of meaning as well as paint. The foreground contained elements of his daily life, the newspaper stand where he met Vincent, the cafe where he took his morning coffee, the bench where he often sat in contemplation. The middle ground transformed these familiar elements into something more symbolic, while the background dissolved into pure emotion, rendered in color and form. As the day progressed, Etienne's confidence grew. His brushstrokes became bolder, more decisive. The technical skills he had feared lost returned gradually, like old friends emerging from a long absence. The muscle memory of decades spent painting reasserted itself, guiding his hand with increasing surety. The work itself began to take on a life of its own, evolving beyond his initial intentions. Colors blended and separated, forms emerged and dissolved, and the composition found its own balance. This organic development reminded Etienne of why he had fallen in love with painting in the first place, the magical moment when the artist becomes as much a witness as a creator. What emerged was not a masterpiece by traditional standards, but it represented something far more valuable, proof that creativity could survive decades of dormancy, that artistic expression could transcend personal tragedy and self-doubt. The painting stood as testament to resilience, to the possibility of beginning again regardless of age or circumstance. As evening approached and the natural light faded, Etienne stepped back from his work. The painting was not finished. Perhaps it would never be truly complete, but it marked a profound shift in his journey. What would this new chapter of his artistic life reveal? How would his accumulated years of observation and reflection influence his work? These questions no longer filled him with dread but with anticipation. The first ripples of recognition began in the small galleries of Paris's left bank, where seasoned art critics noticed subtle changes in the contemporary art landscape. A series of unsigned paintings, bearing an unmistakable technique that hadn't been seen in decades, started appearing in select exhibitions during the spring of 1975. The works carried no attribution, yet their masterful execution and distinctive style sparked intense speculation within the art community. What drew particular attention was the evolution of a familiar technique, one that had been synonymous with Etienne Dupin's work from the 1940s. These new pieces demonstrated the same meticulous attention to light and shadow, but with a deeper, more contemplative understanding that could only come from years of observation and reflection. Could an artist truly return to form after such a prolonged absence from the art world? The prestigious Art Moderne journal published the first serious analysis of these mysterious works, with critic Jean-Paul Mercier drawing careful parallels between the new paintings and Etienne's pre-war portfolio. Mercier's article, while stopping short of direct attribution, posed questions that reverberated through Paris's artistic circles. Who possesses both the technical mastery and the historical understanding to create works that so perfectly bridge the gap between classical technique and modern sensibility? Other critics soon joined the discourse, examining the painting's provenance and technical elements. The discussion expanded beyond mere technique to encompass the philosophical implications of artistic resurrection. The art world hadn't witnessed such a compelling mystery since the debates over Vermeer's authenticity in the early 20th century. What made this case particularly intriguing was the possibility that the artist might still be alive, silently observing the speculation surrounding their work. The paintings themselves appeared sporadically, never more than one or two at a time, in carefully chosen venues. Their scarcity only intensified the interest, leading to heated debates among collectors and critics alike. Some argued that the works represented a brilliant homage by a skilled imitator, while others insisted they bore the unmistakable mark of Etienne's hand. The prices for these unsigned pieces began to climb, driven by both speculation and genuine appreciation for their artistic merit. As summer approached, the whispers grew louder. Several prominent art historians began conducting detailed analyses of the brush techniques and pigment choices used in the new works. Their findings, published in respected academic journals, provided compelling evidence that the paintings shared more than just stylistic similarities with Etienne's earlier work. They demonstrated the same unique understanding of color theory and composition that had made him famous decades ago. The mystery surrounding the painting's origin created an unexpected effect. It led to a renewed interest in Etienne's original works. Museums holding his pieces reported increased visitor numbers, and auction houses noticed a sharp rise in inquiries about his pre-war paintings. This renaissance of interest prompted several major galleries to plan retrospective exhibitions of his known works, inadvertently creating perfect venues for comparing the old with the new. Art students began writing theses about the technical aspects of both periods, analyzing the evolution of style and technique. Their research revealed subtle developments in the new works that suggested not mere imitation, but genuine artistic growth. How could an imitator capture not just the technique, but the natural progression of an artist's vision? The French press, initially skeptical of the art world's excitement, gradually began covering the story. Cultural sections of major newspapers ran features examining the possibility of Etienne's return to painting, though none could produce concrete evidence of his involvement. The mystery only deepened when attempts to locate the artist through his last known contacts proved unsuccessful. By late summer, the art world's attention had fully turned to this enigma. Galleries competed for the opportunity to display these new works, while collectors maneuvered to acquire them, despite, or perhaps because of, their uncertain provenance. The paintings themselves seemed to appear according to some inscrutable pattern, each new piece adding another layer to the mounting speculation. The question that dominated every discussion was not just about authorship, but about the nature of artistic identity itself. If these works were indeed by Etienne, what had prompted his return after so many years of silence? And if they weren't, who possessed such profound understanding of his technique and artistic philosophy? The art world waited, watched, and wondered, as the mystery of the unsigned paintings continued to unfold. The resurgence of interest in Etienne's work brought with it an unexpected burden that weighed heavily on the artist's shoulders. After years of self-imposed exile from the art world, the whispers of recognition had grown into a crescendo of expectations, forcing him to confront the complex relationship between his past achievements and his current artistic identity. Art magazines and critics began drawing parallels between his earlier works and the rumors of his new pieces, creating an idealized narrative of his return that bore little resemblance to Etienne's reality. The pressure to meet these expectations manifested in subtle ways. His brushstrokes became more hesitant, his color choices more calculated, and his creative process more labored. What had once flowed naturally now felt constrained by the invisible chains of public anticipation. The legacy of his previous success cast a long shadow over his studio. Each blank canvas seemed to mock him with the possibilities of either triumph or failure, while every completed work underwent brutal self-scrutiny. Would it be enough? Would it live up to the memory of his earlier masterpieces? These questions haunted Etienne as he worked, turning what had once been a sanctuary into an arena of constant self-doubt. The art world's memory proved both selective and demanding. Critics who had praised his innovative techniques decades ago now expected him to simultaneously evolve and maintain the essence of his original style. This paradoxical expectation created a creative paralysis that threatened to undermine his artistic resurrection. How could one move forward while being anchored to the past? The pressure extended beyond his artistic output to affect his daily routines. Gallery owners who had previously ignored his existence now sought him out, leaving messages that grew increasingly urgent. Each interaction carried the weight of potential disappointment, as if every casual conversation about his work might determine the success or failure of his comeback. His relationship with his own artistic identity became increasingly complex. The young, bold artist who had once shocked the Paris art scene with his revolutionary approaches seemed like a stranger to him now. Yet the art world expected him to channel that same spirit, to recreate the magic that had defined his early career. The disconnect between these expectations and his current artistic voice created a profound sense of displacement. The financial implications of his return added another layer of complexity to his situation. Art collectors began speculating about the value of his existing works, creating a market buzz that threatened to overshadow the artistic merit of his new pieces. Would his new works be judged on their own merits, or would they forever be measured against the inflated values of his past achievements? In his studio, Etienne found himself surrounded by ghosts of his former success. Old sketches and unfinished works from his previous life seemed to demand completion, while new ideas struggled to break free from the constraints of his established style. The creative process, once a source of joy and liberation, had become a battlefield where past and present fought for dominance. The art community's response to rumors of his return revealed the double-edged nature of artistic legacy. While his name still carried weight in galleries and auction houses, it also carried expectations that threatened to suffocate his artistic evolution. Could an artist truly reinvent himself while carrying the burden of his past success? The pressure began to manifest in his technique. His formerly confident brushstrokes showed signs of hesitation, and his bold color choices became more conservative. The spontaneity that had characterized his earlier works gave way to a more calculated approach, as if each artistic decision carried the weight of his entire career. The situation raised fundamental questions about the nature of artistic identity and evolution. Was it possible for an artist to maintain authenticity while being conscious of public expectations? How could one balance the desire to grow and change with the pressure to maintain a recognizable artistic voice? As galleries and collectors positioned themselves for his anticipated return, Etienne found himself at a crossroads. The path forward seemed to require a delicate balance between honoring his artistic legacy and remaining true to his current creative impulses. The weight of his legacy had become both a blessing and a curse, offering opportunities while simultaneously threatening to crush his renewed artistic spirit. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on Johnny's shoulders as he observed the ripple effects of his actions throughout the theater community. What had begun as a well-intentioned intervention to help a struggling actor had transformed into something far more complex and consequential than he had initially anticipated. But could anyone have foreseen the true impact of that fateful decision? Johnny's involvement in Etienne's comeback had sparked discussions among theater critics, industry professionals, and fellow actors about the nature of artistic authenticity and the role of external influence in performance art. The questions that emerged challenged the fundamental assumptions about creative autonomy. When does support cross the line into manipulation? How much of an artist's journey should be shaped by others? The revelation came to Johnny gradually, through subtle signs and quiet moments of reflection. He noticed how other struggling actors began approaching him, seeking similar guidance and intervention. Each request carried the implicit assumption that he possessed some magical formula for success, a blueprint that could be replicated. The reality, however, was far more nuanced and potentially troubling. Theater directors started viewing Johnny differently, consulting him about casting decisions and artistic choices. His reputation had evolved from that of a seasoned actor to something resembling a kingmaker in the local theater scene. This unexpected shift in dynamics brought with it an uncomfortable level of scrutiny and responsibility. What right did he have to wield such influence over others' careers? The situation with Etienne had set a precedent that Johnny hadn't intended. While Etienne's performance had indeed improved, Johnny began to question whether the end justified the means. Had he merely helped Etienne find his own path, or had he inadvertently imposed his own vision of what success should look like? The line between mentorship and manipulation became increasingly blurred. Professional relationships within the theater community started showing subtle strains. Some actors viewed Johnny's involvement with suspicion, wondering if his influence might affect their own opportunities. Others seemed to resent the attention Etienne received, questioning whether his success was truly earned or merely engineered. These undercurrents of tension revealed deeper issues about merit, opportunity, and authenticity in the performing arts. Johnny's revelation extended beyond the immediate theater circle to touch upon broader questions about the nature of artistic development. He began to understand that every intervention, no matter how well-intentioned, carried the potential to alter the natural evolution of an artist's journey. Was it possible that in trying to help, he had disrupted something essential about the process of artistic growth? The impact on his own career became increasingly apparent. Directors and producers began to view him through a different lens, sometimes focusing more on his ability to mentor than his skills as an actor. This shift in perception led to an identity crisis of sorts. Was he still primarily an actor, or had he unwittingly transformed into something else entirely? The revelation brought with it a profound sense of responsibility for the broader implications of his actions. Johnny realized that his intervention with Etienne had established a precedent that could influence how the theater community approached artist development for years to come. The weight of this realization forced him to confront uncomfortable questions about power, influence, and the delicate balance between helping and controlling. As Johnny grappled with these realizations, he found himself increasingly isolated. The unique position he now occupied, somewhere between actor, mentor, and influencer, created a distance between him and his peers. How could he maintain authentic relationships while carrying this new burden of influence? The financial and professional success that had followed his intervention with Etienne now seemed to come with hidden costs. Each new opportunity arrived, laden with expectations and assumptions about his role in shaping others' careers. The pressure to maintain this newly established position while staying true to his artistic principles created an internal conflict that demanded resolution. Looking ahead, Johnny faced crucial decisions about how to proceed. Should he embrace this new role and attempt to establish ethical guidelines for artistic intervention, or should he step back and allow natural talent development to take its course? The answers to these questions would not only shape his own future, but potentially influence the trajectory of countless other artists in the community. The revelation had transformed Johnny's understanding of his place in the theater world. What began as a simple desire to help had evolved into a complex web of responsibilities, expectations, and ethical considerations. As he contemplated his next steps, one question remained paramount. How could he use his influence responsibly while preserving the authentic artistic journey of others? The anticipation surrounding the upcoming exhibition at the Metropolitan Museum of Art created an electric atmosphere throughout New York City's art community. With less than 24 hours until the grand unveiling, the museum's halls buzzed with activity as curators, technicians, and security personnel orchestrated their final preparations. What would unfold in these crucial hours before the exhibition that would change the trajectory of several lives? The museum's restoration department worked meticulously on the last-minute details of the controversial painting. Under the harsh, fluorescent lights, conservators carefully examined every inch of the canvas, ensuring its stability for public display. Their tools lay scattered across steel tables, specialized brushes, magnifying glasses, and conservation materials that represented years of expertise in handling priceless artifacts. The question of authenticity still lingered in the air, despite the extensive documentation and testing that had been conducted over the previous months. Meanwhile, in a secure office overlooking Central Park, Museum Director Catherine Walsh reviewed the final security protocols with her team. The exhibition's unprecedented nature had necessitated additional measures beyond the museum's standard procedures. How could they guarantee the safety of not only the painting, but also the expected influx of visitors drawn by the controversy? Security cameras were being installed in new locations, and extra guards had been scheduled for the opening day. Across the city, art critics and journalists prepared their preliminary articles, each trying to predict the exhibition's impact on the art world. The story had evolved beyond a simple authentication debate into a complex narrative about art, truth, and the nature of perception. Would tomorrow's revelation vindicate or condemn those who had staked their reputations on the painting's legitimacy? In his modest apartment, Professor Marcus Chen sat surrounded by research papers and historical documents. His role in authenticating the painting had drawn both praise and skepticism from his peers. The weight of professional responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders as he reviewed his findings one final time. The technical analysis supported his conclusions, but doubt was an unwelcome companion that refused to leave. What if some crucial detail had been overlooked? The insurance company's representatives conducted their final assessment of the painting's value and security arrangements. The stakes were astronomical, not just in monetary terms, but in potential damage to reputations and careers. They methodically documented every detail, knowing that tomorrow's events could have far-reaching implications for the art insurance industry. How would the market respond to the exhibition's outcome? In the museum's climate-controlled storage facility, specialized handlers prepared the other pieces that would accompany the main attraction. Each artwork had been carefully selected to provide historical context and support the exhibition's narrative. The curatorial team had spent months debating which pieces would best complement the controversial centerpiece. Their choices would either enhance or detract from the viewer's understanding of the artwork's significance. The marketing department made last-minute adjustments to their promotional materials, ensuring that every press release and social media post was perfectly timed. The public's interest had grown exponentially in the preceding weeks, fueled by speculation and debate within the art community. Would the exhibition live up to the unprecedented level of anticipation it had generated? Technical staff tested and retested the lighting systems, adjusting each fixture to create the optimal viewing experience. The painting's unique characteristics required specific illumination to highlight its authentic elements while allowing viewers to examine the questioned areas. The balance between preservation requirements and aesthetic presentation demanded precise calibration. Outside the museum, news vans had already begun to gather, their satellite dishes reaching toward the night sky. Reporters conducted preliminary broadcasts, speculating about what the next day would bring. The exhibition had captured the public's imagination, transcending the usual boundaries of art world interest. How would the general public react to the revelations that awaited them? The night's activities extended beyond the museum's walls, as restaurants and hotels prepared for the influx of VIP guests expected for the opening. Art collectors, dealers, and scholars from around the world had converged on New York, each hoping to witness a potentially historic moment in the art world. Their presence added another layer of pressure to an already tense situation. As midnight approached, the museum's halls gradually fell silent. The painting waited in its secure display case, unaware of the controversy it had sparked or the impact it would have on countless lives. The quiet hours before dawn held both promise and uncertainty. What truths would tomorrow's light reveal about the artwork that had captured the world's attention? The soft glow of evening lights illuminated the pristine walls of Galerie Lumière as Paris's most distinguished art enthusiasts began to filter through its doors. The carefully curated exhibition space, now transformed by Etienne Dupont's latest collection, buzzed with an energy that spoke of both excitement and uncertainty. Would the prodigal artist make his first public appearance in over a decade? Gallery owner Marcel Laurent stood near the entrance, greeting each arrival with practiced charm while his eyes frequently darted to the door. The guest list included critics, collectors, and cultural luminaries who had specifically cleared their schedules for this momentous occasion. Among them, Several familiar faces from Etienne's past emerged. Former colleagues, mentors, and even rivals who had long speculated about his mysterious absence from the art world. Whispers circulated through the growing crowd as people moved. Between the paintings, their conversations a mixture of artistic analysis and personal theories about Etienne's whereabouts. The exhibition's centerpiece, a large-scale work shrouded in dark fabric, drew particular attention. Marcel had insisted on keeping it covered until the perfect moment, adding another layer of intrigue to the evening's proceedings. Art critic Florence Beaumont, known for her scathing reviews and uncompromising standards, examined each piece with calculated precision. Her presence alone caused ripples of nervous energy among the gallery staff. Would she recognize the evolution in Etienne's technique? How would she interpret the darker themes evident in his recent works? The collection itself told a story of transformation. Early pieces from before Etienne's disappearance hung alongside his new works, creating a stark contrast between past and present. The progression revealed not just artistic growth but a fundamental shift in perspective. From the optimistic, light-filled scenes of his youth to more complex, shadowed compositions that hinted at inner turmoil. Several prominent collectors, huddled in small groups, their discussions centered on the potential value of these new pieces. The art market had never forgotten Etienne Dupont, and his absence had only increased the worth of his existing works. What would this new collection do to the prices of his earlier pieces? More importantly, how would the art world receive this evolved version of their once celebrated prodigy? Among the guests, Sophie Rousseau moved quietly through the space, observing reactions and occasionally engaging in conversation about specific pieces. As Etienne's agent, she felt the weight of responsibility for this comeback, knowing that years of careful planning had led to this moment. Her composed exterior masked the anxiety of uncertainty. Would Etienne actually appear as promised? The gallery staff maintained their professional demeanor while executing the carefully planned evening schedule. Champagne flowed freely and servers circulated with elegant hors d'oeuvres, but the real sustenance everyone craved was information about the artist himself. When would he arrive? Would he speak about his work? The questions hung in the air like invisible artwork, drawing everyone's attention even as they pretended to focus on the visible pieces before them. Time seemed to move differently within the gallery's walls as the evening progressed. Each opening of the door caused a subtle shift in the room's energy, heads turning slightly, conversations pausing momentarily. The anticipation had become almost tangible, a presence in itself that competed with the artwork for attention. Local and international press representatives positioned themselves strategically throughout the space, cameras ready, notepads in hand. This wasn't just another gallery opening. It was potentially one of the most significant art world events of the decade. How would they capture the moment if Etienne appeared? What story would they tell if he didn't? As the designated hour of the official opening ceremony approached, Marcel began to guide guests toward the center of the gallery. The covered centerpiece loomed large, its presence a physical manifestation of the evening's mounting tension. Would this be the moment when Etienne Dupont finally stepped out of the shadows and back into the spotlight he had once commanded? The crowd's attention focused increasingly on the gallery entrance, their anticipation building with each passing minute. The question that had dominated Paris's art scene for months now reached its crescendo. Would the enigmatic artist return to claim his place in the world he had abandoned? Or would his absence become the final brushstroke in this carefully composed evening? The long-awaited moment arrived as Etienne Dupont stepped through the gallery doors, marking his first public appearance in over 5 years. The celebrated artist's return to the Parisian art scene created an immediate ripple effect through the assembled crowd, who fell into a hushed silence as they recognized his distinctive silhouette. How would the reclusive master painter handle this pivotal moment of reemergence? Etienne's appearance had changed notably since his last public showing. His once dark hair now carried distinguished streaks of gray, and his face bore the subtle marks of time and solitude. Yet his eyes retained their characteristic intensity, scanning the gallery with the same keen observation that had always informed his work. His simple black suit and white shirt stood in stark contrast to the flamboyant attire of many attendees, reflecting his unwavering focus on art rather than spectacle. The gallery's atmosphere shifted perceptibly as Etienne moved through the space. Conversations ceased mid-sentence, replaced by whispered observations and theories about his absence. Art critics who had spent years speculating about his withdrawal from society now found themselves mere feet away from their elusive subject. Would their numerous theories about his disappearance finally be confirmed or dismissed? Gallery owner Marie Laurent approached Etienne with practiced grace, extending a warm welcome that helped ease the initial tension. Her professional demeanor provided a buffer between the artist and the eager crowd, allowing him to maintain his composure as he adjusted to the overwhelming attention. The partnership between Laurent and Etienne had survived his years of seclusion, strengthened by their mutual respect for artistic integrity. Several prominent collectors who had invested heavily in Etienne's earlier works positioned themselves strategically throughout the gallery. Their presence underscored the commercial implications of his return, though the artist appeared determinedly focused on the artwork rather than the potential transactions surrounding them. The relationships between artists and their patrons had always been complex, but how would Etienne's extended absence affect these crucial connections? The exhibition itself represented a striking evolution in Etienne's artistic journey. His new collection revealed deeper layers of complexity, with each piece displaying technical mastery while exploring increasingly challenging themes. The work showed no signs of creative stagnation during his years away. Instead, they suggested a period of intense artistic growth and experimentation. What transformative experiences had shaped these new directions in his work? Art critics moved methodically through the exhibition, their notepads filling with observations and analyses. The pressure of their scrutiny was palpable, as their reviews would significantly influence the reception of Etienne's comeback. Their preliminary reactions suggested a mix of surprise and admiration, though their final verdicts remained to be published. How would the critical establishment respond to this unexpected evolution in his artistic expression? Young artists who had been influenced by Etienne's earlier work observed him with particular interest. His influence on contemporary art had continued even during his absence, and his return promised to shape new directions in the field. These emerging talents sought clues in his behavior and new work that might illuminate their own artistic paths. What wisdom might they glean from this living legend's journey? The social dynamics within the gallery reflected the complex hierarchies of the art world. Established collectors and critics maintained their distance while attempting to catch Etienne's attention, while younger artists and enthusiasts watched from the periphery. The artist navigated these unspoken boundaries with quiet dignity, acknowledging greetings but maintaining a careful reserve that had characterized his entire career. Questions about Etienne's future plans circulated throughout the evening. Would this exhibition mark a permanent return to public life, or was it merely a brief emergence from his self-imposed exile? The art world's curiosity about his next moves added an undercurrent of speculation to the event. His choices would undoubtedly influence the trajectory of contemporary art in Paris and beyond. As the evening progressed, Etienne's presence became less sensation and more substance. The initial shock of his return gave way to genuine engagement with his new work. The artist's dedication to his craft remained evident in every interaction, suggesting that despite his absence from public view, his commitment to artistic excellence had never wavered. What new chapters would unfold in this remarkable artist's story? The significance of Etienne's return extended beyond the immediate event. His re-emergence represented a crucial moment in contemporary art history, potentially influencing future generations of artists and collectors. The art world's response to this pivotal evening would reveal much about how creativity, commerce, and cultural value intersected in modern society. The resounding success of Etienne's return to the art world created ripples throughout Paris's creative community, but perhaps no one felt its impact more profoundly than Colette Rousseau. The gallery owner, who had spent years wrestling with her role in Etienne's disappearance, found herself at a crossroads where past decisions collided with present redemption. What does one do when the very artist whose career they inadvertently derailed returns triumphantly to the spotlight? For Colette, the answer emerged gradually. as she observed the overwhelming response to Etienne's new collection. The critical acclaim and public fascination with his work validated what she had recognized in him years ago, a raw talent that transcended conventional artistic boundaries. The morning after the exhibition's opening, Colette arrived at her gallery earlier than usual. The familiar space, filled with various artists' works, seemed different somehow. Each piece appeared to whisper stories of missed opportunities and second chances. Her decision to prioritize commercial success over artistic integrity had haunted her for years, manifesting in sleepless nights and a growing disconnect from the very art world she once cherished. The weight of her past actions began to lift as she witnessed Etienne's graceful handling of his return. Rather than harboring resentment or seeking revenge, he had channeled his experiences into creating something profound. His new work spoke of resilience, transformation, and the complex nature of human relationships, themes that resonated deeply with Colette's own journey. Through private conversations with other gallery owners and critics, Colette learned of Etienne's growth during his years away from the spotlight. His time in seclusion had not diminished his talent but rather refined it, adding layers of depth and maturity to his artistic vision. How many other artists had she potentially stunted by prioritizing marketability over authentic expression? The realization prompted Colette to reassess her gallery's direction. She began actively seeking out emerging artists whose work challenged conventional norms, much like Etienne's had years ago. The transformation wasn't merely professional, it marked a fundamental shift in her approach to art curation and representation. As news of Etienne's successful comeback spread through Paris's artistic circles, Colette found herself fielding numerous inquiries about his work. Each conversation served as an opportunity to advocate for artistic authenticity, a stark departure from her previous focus on commercial viability. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had become a champion for the very qualities she once dismissed. The art community noticed this evolution in Colette's curatorial practices. Young artists who had previously avoided her gallery began submitting their portfolios, sensing a genuine appreciation for innovative and challenging work. How had one artist's return managed to catalyze such a fundamental shift in the Parisian art scene? Colette's relationship with Etienne remained complex, marked by unspoken acknowledgments of past wrongs and present growth. Their interactions at industry events were cordial but carried the weight of shared history. Yet it was precisely this tension that drove Colette's commitment to nurturing new talent differently. The gallery owner's redemption manifested in subtle ways. Through her mentoring of emerging artists, her willingness to take risks on unconventional exhibitions, and her vocal support for artistic independence. The transformation attracted attention from art publications, which began featuring stories about the evolution of her gallery's vision. What emerged was a new paradigm in Paris's gallery scene, one that balanced commercial viability with artistic integrity. Other gallery owners observed Colette's success with this approach, leading to a broader shift in how emerging artists were discovered and promoted. Could this be the beginning of a more authentic era in the city's art world? The impact of Etienne's return extended beyond individual relationships, influencing the very structure of Paris's artistic community. Colette's journey from pragmatic businesswoman to passionate advocate for artistic authenticity exemplified the potential for growth and change within the industry. Her story became intertwined with Etienne's comeback, creating a narrative of redemption that resonated throughout the art world. As the dust settled on Etienne's triumphant return, Colette found herself leading a movement toward more thoughtful and inclusive art curation. The guilt that had once defined her relationship with art transformed into a driving force for positive change. Through this evolution, she discovered that redemption wasn't merely about making amends for past mistakes. It was about creating new opportunities for others to succeed where she had once failed them. The first reviews of Etienne Dupont's new collection emerged gradually across various art publications and digital platforms, creating ripples throughout the Parisian art scene. What began as whispered discussions in gallery corridors soon transformed into full-fledged critical analyses, as respected voices in the industry weighed in on his unexpected return. Art critic Marcel Beaumont, writing for Le Monde des Arts, approached the collection with measured skepticism that gradually gave way to genuine appreciation. His review focused on the evolution of Etienne's technique, noting how the artist's signature style had matured during his absence. The critic observed the deeper emotional resonance in the new works, particularly in how they captured the interplay between light and shadow in ways that transcended mere technical proficiency. Contemporary Art Review published an extensive analysis by Sophia Rossi, who drew fascinating parallels between Etienne's earlier works and his current collection. She identified subtle references to his past pieces while highlighting the marked progression in his artistic vision. The review emphasized how his time away from the spotlight had seemingly stripped away any pretense, leaving behind work that spoke with raw authenticity. Digital art platforms began featuring in-depth discussions about the collection's impact on modern French art. Critics debated whether Etienne's return represented a continuation of his previous trajectory or marked the beginning of an entirely new artistic phase. The discourse expanded beyond traditional art criticism to explore broader themes of artistic redemption and creative evolution. Several reviewers noted the striking contrast between the commercial success of his earlier work and the deeper emotional complexity of his current pieces. The transformation sparked debates about the relationship between commercial viability and artistic integrity. Could an artist achieve both without compromising either? Etienne's new collection seemed to challenge the notion that these aspects were mutually exclusive. International art publications picked up the story, framing it within the context of contemporary European art movements. The International Art Quarterly positioned Etienne's return as a significant moment in French artistic expression, suggesting that his work bridged traditional techniques with modern sensibilities. How would this synthesis influence emerging artists in the contemporary art scene? Critics particularly focused on the technical aspects of his new pieces, noting the subtle variations in his brush techniques and his innovative use of color gradients. These elements demonstrated not only his continued mastery of fundamental skills, but also his willingness to push beyond conventional boundaries. The attention to detail in his work sparked discussions about the role of traditional techniques in contemporary art. Social media platforms buzzed with reactions from younger art critics who brought fresh perspectives to the discussion. They emphasized how Etienne's work resonated with newer generations while maintaining its appeal to traditional art enthusiasts. This cross-generational appeal became a central point in many reviews, raising questions about the universality of artistic expression. Some critics delved into the psychological aspects of the collection, analyzing how Etienne's personal journey manifested in his art. They explored the relationship between artistic expression and personal growth, questioning how life experiences shape creative output. What role did his time away from the art world play in developing this new artistic voice? The critical response also highlighted the collection's timing within the broader context of contemporary art trends. As the industry grappled with questions of authenticity and commercialization, Etienne's return offered a compelling case study in artistic integrity. His work seemed to challenge prevailing assumptions about career trajectories in the art world. Professional art journals published detailed technical analyses of his methods, noting how he had refined his approach while maintaining his distinctive style. These assessments provided valuable insights for other artists and students of fine art, contributing to ongoing discussions about technique and innovation in contemporary painting. The diversity of critical responses reflected the complexity of Etienne's new work. While some reviewers focused on the technical aspects, others emphasized the emotional depth and cultural significance of his return. This multifaceted critical reception demonstrated how his art had evolved to engage with various levels of artistic discourse. As the reviews continued to accumulate, they collectively painted a picture of an artist who had not merely returned, but had transformed. The critical consensus suggested that Etienne's new work represented something more significant than a simple comeback. It marked the emergence of a more mature and nuanced artistic voice. What would this mean for his future trajectory and the broader landscape of contemporary art? The transformation of an artist's perspective rarely occurs in dramatic moments, but rather through subtle shifts in understanding that accumulate over time. For Etienne, the wave of critical responses to his latest work served as a catalyst for such a transformation, though not in the way one might expect. How does an artist reconcile years of self-imposed artistic exile with sudden recognition? The critical acclaim that followed his recent exhibition created an unusual predicament for Etienne. Having spent years deliberately removed from the art world's spotlight, he found himself confronting not just public attention, but also his own deeply ingrained habits of isolation. The reviews, while predominantly positive, forced him to examine the very foundations of his artistic identity. What truly defines success in the realm of artistic expression? Etienne's studio, once a fortress of solitude, gradually evolved into a space of renewed possibility. He began to approach his work with a different energy, one that acknowledged both his past achievements and future potential. The rigid boundaries he had constructed between his art and the outside world started to dissolve, not through any conscious decision, but through the natural progression of accepting his place within the broader artistic community. The process of accepting this second chance manifested in subtle ways. Etienne's working hours shifted from exclusively nocturnal to including daylight sessions. His correspondence with galleries and fellow artists, once limited to necessary communications, expanded into meaningful dialogues about technique, inspiration, and the role of art in contemporary society. What emerged was not a complete abandonment of his previous methods, but rather an integration of his established practices with new possibilities. Professional relationships, long kept at arm's length, began to develop organic depth. Etienne found himself engaging in conversations that extended beyond mere technical discussions of art. Gallery owners, critics, and fellow artists who had known him primarily through his work discovered a person willing to share insights into his creative process. This openness, though carefully measured, represented a significant departure from his former stance of strict professional distance. The question of authenticity remained central to Etienne's evolution. How could an artist maintain their integrity while embracing wider recognition? His solution emerged through a careful balance of engagement and discretion. He continued to protect his creative space while selectively participating in the broader art community. This approach allowed him to maintain the essence of his artistic vision while acknowledging the value of connection and dialogue. Technical aspects of his work underwent subtle but significant changes. His brushwork, while retaining its characteristic precision, acquired new elements of spontaneity. Color choices expanded beyond his traditional palette, though these changes occurred so gradually that they seemed like natural progressions rather than deliberate departures. The evolution of his technique reflected his internal journey toward accepting growth and change. The impact of this transformation extended beyond his artistic practice. Etienne's daily routines, once structured to minimize external influences, began to accommodate new experiences. He found himself observing the world with renewed curiosity, allowing everyday moments to inform his artistic vision. What role did these small changes play in the larger narrative of his artistic development? Financial considerations, while never the primary driver of his work, assumed a different perspective. The commercial success following his recent exhibition provided a degree of security that, rather than corrupting his artistic integrity, allowed him to explore new directions without immediate pressure. This financial buffer created space for experimentation and risk-taking in his work. The relationship between artist and audience evolved as well. Etienne began to recognize that viewers' interpretations of his work contributed to its meaning, rather than diminishing his artistic intent. This shift in perspective led to more nuanced considerations of how his art communicated with its audience. What responsibilities did an artist have to those who engaged with their work? His studio practice adapted to accommodate these changes, while maintaining essential elements of his creative process. The solitude necessary for deep artistic work remained, but it no longer served as a barrier against the world. Instead, it functioned as a renewable source of energy, allowing him to engage more fully with the art community when appropriate. The acceptance of this new chapter in his artistic life didn't require Etienne to discard his past approaches entirely. Rather, it involved an expansion of possibilities, an acknowledgement that growth could occur without compromising fundamental principles. How did this evolution reflect broader questions about artistic development and authenticity? As Etienne moved forward, the integration of his established artistic identity with new opportunities created a richer, more complex approach to his work. This period marked not an end or a beginning, but rather a continuation, one that acknowledged both the value of his previous path and the potential of new directions. The question remained, how would this evolution influence his future artistic contributions? The journey of artistic redemption reached its culmination as Etienne contemplated his most meaningful work yet, a portrait that would serve as both a gift and a testament to the transformative power of second chances. What began as a chance encounter with Johnny had evolved into something far more profound, and now Etienne found himself preparing to create a piece that would encapsulate their shared journey. The selection of materials held particular significance for this special portrait. Etienne chose his finest brushes, the ones he had carefully preserved from his days in Paris, and prepared a canvas with the same meticulous attention he had once reserved for his most prestigious commissions. The paints he selected were of the highest quality, their rich pigments promising to capture the subtle nuances he envisioned for this deeply personal work. What makes a portrait truly capture the essence of its subject? This question weighed heavily on Etienne's mind as he began his preliminary sketches. Unlike his previous works, which had often been exercises in technical precision, this portrait needed to reflect not just Johnny's physical appearance, but the spirit of renewal that the young man had inadvertently inspired in him. Through careful strokes and thoughtful composition, Etienne worked to incorporate elements that spoke to Johnny's role in his artistic resurrection. The process of creating the portrait became a meditation on their shared experiences. Each brushstroke carried the weight of their conversations, the quiet moments of understanding, and the gradual rebuilding of Etienne's confidence as an artist. The canvas slowly transformed, revealing not just Johnny's likeness but the story of two individuals whose paths had crossed at precisely the right moment. Technical excellence merged with emotional resonance as Etienne applied his decades of experience to this singular work. The portrait incorporated subtle references to their first meeting, the restoration project that had brought them together, and the subsequent evolution of their friendship. These elements were woven into the composition with such finesse that they might go unnoticed by casual observers while remaining deeply meaningful to those who knew the full story. The color palette Etienne selected held particular significance. He chose warm, vibrant tones that reflected Johnny's youthful energy, while incorporating deeper, more complex shades that spoke to the depth of their connection. How could mere pigments convey the profound impact of their chance encounter? This challenge drove Etienne to push beyond his usual techniques, experimenting with new approaches to capture the intangible aspects of their relationship. As the portrait neared completion, Etienne found himself reflecting on the circular nature of their journey. He had begun as Johnny's mentor in art restoration, yet through their association, Johnny had unknowingly guided him back to his true calling as an artist. The portrait would serve as a physical manifestation of this exchange, a tangible reminder of how one person's faith could reignite another's passion. The final touches required particular attention to detail. Etienne spent hours refining the subtle interplay of light and shadow, ensuring that every element contributed to the overall impact of the piece. The background, rather than being a mere setting, became an integral part of the narrative, suggesting both the physical space of their shared experiences and the metaphorical landscape of their journey together. The signature presented a moment of profound significance. When was the last time Etienne had signed his name to an original work with genuine pride? As he carefully added his mark to the canvas, he recognized this as more than just the completion of a portrait. It was the final affirmation of his return to authentic artistic expression. The portrait's completion marked more than just the end of a project. It represented the fulfillment of a cycle that had begun with loss and concluded with renewal. Through this work, Etienne acknowledged not only Johnny's role in his artistic resurrection, but also his own capacity for growth and change. The portrait stood as a testament to the unexpected ways in which human connections can restore what seems irretrievably lost. The anticipation of presenting the portrait to Johnny carried its own weight of emotion. Would this gift adequately express the depth of gratitude Etienne felt? Could any single work of art fully convey the transformation that had occurred through their association? These questions lingered as Etienne prepared for the moment of revelation, understanding that this portrait represented not just an image, but a milestone in both their lives. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, it would mean a lot.